Hello, everybody, and welcome to Breezin with Bierman. The great Adam Bierman is off tonight, and tonight we have one hell of a show. We have the great Drew Stone, the great Drew Stone in from New York City, along with Michael Alago, who will be joining us shortly. Drew Stone's a filmmaker. He specializes in documentaries. He's made great films like All Ages, the New York Hardcore Chronicles. He's got one coming out on Muhammad Ali. And the main event of today is his recent film, the documentary of Michael Alago. Who the bleep is that guy? And he'll be here shortly. But Drew, welcome to Princeton.
Thank you.
Welcome to Breezin with Bierman.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me, Bierman, even though Bierman's not here.
Yes, Bierman's attending to some family issues. So tell us. You have films. You've been doing films for a while now, and right now we are currently playing the New York Hardcore Chronicles. What I got to ask you, because I made my own documentary called Pennsylvania Hardcore, and that took. How do you put 90 minutes into trying to do a total history? You had a big beast here, and I'm sure you could have made your documentary way harder. How did you go about putting it together, and how did you go about basically saying this is what I got to represent it? Like, how'd you put it together?
Well, with this particular film, the New York Hardcore Chronicles film, it's not the history of New York hardcore. It's really, it's shot in an episodic format. So I avoid that whole, to do the history of New York hardcore, I'd probably need 6 hours or something like that.
You need volumes.
So really, it's really about the community and the culture. And the way the film is set up is, it's really episodes and segments. So sort of, and it's all very random. So this is sort of like if there was, like a deck of cards. If there was 50 segments, and I kind of shuffled, the deck, and sort of, dealt like 6 or 7 cards, 6 or 7 episodes, and that's kind of what it is. So it's not, historical in a sense like that. It's sort of it goes all over the place with the thread of New York hardcore running through it. So that's how I approach that, and in that regard, this is a film that could go on forever, or not forever, but for a while. But eventually I had to wrestle it into a feature film format, and that took a little while. Yeah. So,
gotcha. Well, I'm sure there's a lot of people from the hardcore scene watching this and probably already seen it, like I have. But for anyone else who wants to watch this movie right now, how do they go about seeing it?
Well, the New York Hardcore Chronicles film is on iTunes and on Amazon and a lot of those platforms, Vimeo or YouTube and all those platforms. But iTunes is really probably a good way to see it. The DVD is also available at www.thenewyorkhardcorechroniclesfilm.com. And the DVD is available, and there's merchandise there like T-shirts and sweatshirts, and some of my other films are available. So the film's been out since May of 2017, and it's been a real nice run. Over the summer I did a bunch of screenings all over the world, and people love the film, so it's cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, man.
You also have one coming out. I saw the trailer on Muhammad Ali.
The Ali film is interesting. My dad was a filmmaker, and my dad did a Muhammad Ali documentary in the 70s called Me We. And it's a short documentary film about Ali. Doesn't really take place in the ring per se. It's more about his lifestyle at the time, and kind of him in his training camp, and his relationship with kids and the public, and sort of like a lifestyle film. And my dad did it, and it ran on HBO in 1977, I believe. Like 8 times when HBO was like a box that you press a button, So it ran about 8 times in 1977, and then it went into a draw for 40 years.
Oh.
So at a certain point, my dad gave me the film, and I took the film and I did a new film to tape transfer, and we color corrected it, and we did an audio mix, and we're looking to get it out there, and based on the success of this film and my other film that we're going to talk about in a little while, the distributor was interested in what else that I had, and sports films do very well on iTunes and things like that. So struck a deal for the Ali film. It's called Me, We, and we're doing a screening in New York in January, and with former Mayor David Dinkins, hopefully. And, just getting that out there. So I sort of regurgitated the film, and, it's like from executive producer Drew Stone. I'm like the impetus behind getting it out. So it's cool. Looking forward to my dad's, film seeing the light of day again. So, yeah.
That's great. And since from, the sun, they keep bringing it alive.
Yeah, and it's nice that, based on the juice of my other films and that they're doing well, I could get that out. That's
Gotcha.
cool. Yeah.
And you were briefly telling me you were looking to do another one on Rockabilly Band?
Yeah, I'm gearing up to do a rockabilly film with one of the guys from the Stray Cats, Slim Jim Phantom.
Awesome.
That's in pre-production now, just trying to get it rolling. Kind of I don't want to say the history of rockabilly, but kind of like Slim Jim walking us through, the rockabilly world, and so that should be,
Sounds good.
just trying to get that going now, and just trying to start that odyssey now, which, usually these films take a couple years to do. So gearing up to do that.
So I personally got a question for you because I made my own documentary and I did one and I was done.
Yeah.
And I realized there's a lot of people when you do these topics that a lot of hands involved, and sometimes you're on punk rock time. Sometimes you got people that are right there, and then you others got like, I'll get you tomorrow, and you can lose. How did you do this many times? Because I don't know how your head didn't explode.
How did I make so many documentaries?
How did you make? Yeah, especially the music scene. Like you had all ages, and then you had this one.
Well, I come from I'm a musician. Initially, I sing in one of the original New York hardcore bands, a band called Antidote. I came up in the New York hardcore scene, and then I had a career doing music videos. Did a lot of the early hip hop music videos in New York, and then, went on to do a lot of hard rock and metal videos. And after that, I had a whole another career doing extreme sports films. Okay. I did all the Urban Street Bike Warrior films, and I directed the MTV True Life episode "I Live to Ride," a True Life, yeah. So when it came time. I did the XXX All Ages XXX, the Boston hardcore film, and that took a few years to get out. And then I started the Alago film, which we're going to talk about, and did the New York hardcore film at the same time.
Wow.
And it's just it's just in my wheelhouse right now. Music docs are what I do, and what I enjoy doing, and what I do well right now. So that's really, and I must say that I learned a lot from doing these two films, and I'm bringing that into my next project. Just about how business and creative wise, it's like, you live and you learn, and you bring that on to the next project, So I'm excited about doing the next thing. Awesome. I learned a lot, I got knocked around doing these.
And you got to be flexible on your time too, because someone could be like, I'm ready to get interviewed now, and you got to kind of be on the clock 24/7.
Yeah, there's a whole ebb and a flow to these things, some people you chase around for a year.
Yep.
And some people, already, right there in that moment, you just sort of have to juggle it and, figure it out. But that's part of the, and also like I'm one of the last of the truly independent filmmakers. Yeah. So I don't have a production infrastructure around me per se. Mm-hmm. It's basically a lot of it. I do like these interviews that we see here in this film. And also in the Alago film, it's really just me and the person, me interviewing the person. I don't like to have a large camera crew. Uh-huh. I own a camera, I have a lighting package. Whether it's this guy Randall Underwood or the Metallica guys, I like to set the camera up and be in the room with them by myself.
Gotcha.
And that's kind of how I do it. And I like to feel that intimacy comes through, in the films. So. That's how it works for me. I think I would be uncomfortable being in a room interviewing somebody with a whole bunch of people. I think even if I was doing bigger budget things and I had a whole crew of people, I'd probably make them get out of the room. Because
your comfort zone.
I just don't, I just think it's sort of awkward to be like, okay, we're going to do something totally unnatural, but I want you to act natural. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So that's why I feel that when it's just me, even us right now, it's just you and me in this room.
Yep.
And there's a sense of intimacy to it. and I think that carries through in my films. I like to think so.
I think it's working for you.
Yeah.
We are going to step away and come back with the great Mike Alago. So, few minutes. Be right with you.
Get your shoes and socks on.
Welcome back. And we are here with the guest of honor himself, the great Mike Alago, here pushing his recent film, Who the Bleep Is That Guy? I try not to curse. But
well, we can say Who the F Is That Guy?
That's right.
I mean, I know it's a provocative title, so a lot of times we have to say that.
Who the bleep is that guy? But Mike,
Yes.
and to the rest of my Princeton audience, that there's a lot of people that don't get the credit. When you hear a band get signed, you think of the band, you immediately think of the label. No one ever thinks of the connector. And we got this guy brought a lot of bands that you currently listen to the mainstream. So Mike, could you really tell the audience a list of bands that you broke through to the mainstream that they're listening to today?
Oh gosh, let's see. Well, I signed Metallica. I signed Metal Church, Flotsam and Jetsam. I executive produced a band called Dokken. I signed a New York noise band called Swans. I executive produced 2 Cyndi Lauper records, and I worked with the great Nina Simone. I executive produced her last recordings before she passed away. And
White Zombie?
Rob Zombie, but his previous band, White Zombie. And I also worked with John Lydon, formerly Johnny Rotten from the Sex Pistols. And I signed his band Public Image Limited to Elektra. Those are some of those names.
Awesome. And you also, at one point, you were working for Geffen Records?
I did. You know, it's a very funny thing. I did A&R, and for those people who don't know what A&R means, it stands for Artist and Repertoire. And it's kind of the most important part of the record company. Without the A&R department, there are no records. So that's what I did for 25 years. And I worked at Elektra, I worked at Geffen, I worked at Elektra, I worked at Geffen. I forget that I worked for a moment in time at Uni Records. And then for the last 3 or 4 years of my A&R career, from about 2000 to 2004, I worked at Chris Blackwell's company called Palm Pictures, which was half independent feature films and half record company.
Wow.
So that right there, and that between my first job ever at the Ritz from 1980 to 83, that's 24 years right there.
So right there, like that. So this documentary comes together, and I think it's an amazing
Oh,
idea.
thank you so much.
You deserve it. But between you and Drew, how did this idea come about?
Oh, it's all his doing.
Well, basically, like I say in the beginning of the film, I used to go out in New York City and I kept seeing the same person over and over again. We were younger then, of course. And I was like, who is that guy? Who is that guy? Literally. I mean, I was literally. And then eventually I found out, it was Michael Alago. And this is about the time that he signed Metallica. And then later on, I was managing a band that got out on the Misfits European tour when the Misfits were touring in Europe. I went out on the tour with my band as well, to sort of drive the Winnebago and see Europe and have some fun. And I met Michael Alago, who was on the tour at that time. He had signed the Misfits to Geffen Records. So my guys were out on the tour. Alago was out on the tour. And anytime you're sort of caravanning around the world, with a bunch of people, you develop,
a bunch of crazy people.
Yeah, you develop
myself included.
You develop some bonds and some relationship, and then we were friends after that. And when my XXX All Ages XXX, the Boston hardcore film, screened at the Boston International Film Festival back in, I think it was 2012 or 13 or something,
at the Brattle Theater in Cambridge.
Brattle Theater, Alago showed up. And I was really touched and flattered by it. I didn't invite him. I didn't think to invite him. And he just showed up. And I was really appreciative. And then he enjoyed the film. And then afterwards, I was at a Cro-Mag show in New York, and I bumped into him. And I walked out of there, thinking, wow, Michael has a great story. And then, after that, we got together. And I said, I'd like to make a film about your life. And we started, going back and forth with it, and that really began the journey.
How long did it take to do?
From soup to nuts, 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It was a great ride. It was a great ride, and it was a learning experience for both of us, and we're very close now. I mean, as friends, so it's nice.
How do you feel about when you just walk out the door? and you see kids walking by and they got the Metallica shirts,
Oh well,
the white
it's really incredible. I I really think that when I signed them in the summer of 1984, I just kind of knew that this was going to be the band.
Yeah, like how did,
Yes.
give an order, like how did that happen?
Well, I saw them a number of times before I signed them. I saw them at Lemore's in Brooklyn with my friend Phil Cavano. I saw them in New Jersey. I saw them on the West Coast in San Francisco. And then finally in summer of 84, when they played Roseland, that was like the definitive moment when I knew I had to have these people in my both professional and personal life. They were, or they are, wildly charismatic characters, all four of them. And, there was never, you were never not able to look at them on stage. And James Hetfield, their singer, is a ringleader on stage. He knew how to corral an audience and get them in the palm of his hand all the time. For all of the insanity back in the day, and they were being called alcoholic because we were all doing a lot of drinking, these were people who were always very focused about their career. And even though it was wild and crazy back then, that was the beauty of the performances, that they were wild and crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when you bring them to the record label, like
Yes.
they were already known for signing all the metal bands?
No, not necessarily. When I brought them to Elektra, they had already made an independent record called Kill 'Em All.
Yes.
And, the label Megaforce took them as far as they could take them. And I knew that, they had to be with a major label. So a couple of people, including our chairman, Bob Krasnow, and our head of radio promotion, Mike Bone, both came to Roseland that evening. And the next day, they just, I think they kind of understood it, but not really. But they knew, and they had trust in Bob had trust in his A&R people that you were either going to sink or swim. And I intended to swim, which I did for 24 years.
When it came to that, though, when they heard the album, were they like, how did they take them? Did they kind of just see your vision, or did you kind of have to twist their arm? Trust me, they got the following. You got to do this.
They totally trusted me. Because like I said, Bob hired A&R people for a reason, and you either knew what you were doing or you didn't. And thank God, my instincts are very good for people, for artists. And, the next day after Roseland, they came into the record company. We sat in the, what room did we sit in?
The green room?
Okay, like a green room. And, I got Chinese food and beer for the conference room. Thank you, Drew. That's why I have Drew here. And our chairman came into the office, and he was the chairman, with the cigar and the fabulous suit. And he just said, guys, Michael wants you here. We want you here. And as they say, the rest is history.
I think in the film, there's some of Alago's Polaroids from Metallica's first visit up to Elektra Records, and we've incorporated.
They look very young.
Yeah, they're very young.
It's
really great. That he sort of documented that moment. But in retrospect, here, Alago's signing of Metallica to Elektra Records, a major label, really opened the door to all these other, and the success that they had opened the door for every other major label. Like, for instance, Capitol ran out and signed Megadeth,
yes,
and this one went out.
Anthrax took the
but this
yes,
was,
of course.
right, you're right.
What was that moment in time when that signing changed the landscape of hard rock and heavy metal?
Yeah.
Because after that, everybody wanted their own Metallica.
Same thing when the equivalent hair bands. When one of them
Absolutely.
broke through, everybody took their own. Yeah.
So, like you were starting to say, Anthrax got signed to Island. Drew had just mentioned that Megadeth got signed to Capitol. Slayer got signed to Deaf American. So everybody found their own version. And a lot of those bands are still around, which is great. And that's it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
Well,
big part of our. Yeah, but yeah, I just think that's just amazing.
But also an interesting thing that Kirk Hammett from Metallica brought up was that in a certain way, this heralded what came after, which was the grunge movement, because in a way it softened up the record labels to take more of a chance. So they realized, hey,
and sign artists that were not safe.
That's
really.
right. That's right. So
or traditional.
That's right. And in a way that opened it up, that sort of tenderized them, you know, when it came time to sign bands like Pearl Jam and Soundgarden, like the next sort
Wave.
of
Next
wave.
And you know, it's true. You know.
Yeah. Have you ever, you ever been out and to see someone and they're kind of being disrespectful? And do you ever like, oh, that shirt you're wearing, the only reason they're famous is because of me, and just no one believes. Do people have like a hard time if you've ever? Sure, you don't just go around saying what you've done, but
Never.
if you've ever, has anyone has called you up like, nah, not you. You're not responsible for signing these bands?
Oh, no, not really. I think people, you know, after all these years, they know my history. And people are always very grateful and kind. And they will come up to me and want to shake my hand and take a picture. And more so of that because of the film. And, you know, our film is now on Netflix. And because of Netflix, which it began airing September 1st, that's a global market.
I saw it last Friday. Yep.
Everybody has seen the film. You know, I get mail from Colombia, from Paris, from London, from New Zealand, from New York City, all over the place, and people are really enjoying the film.
Yeah, it's on the big stage
it's
now.
wonderful.
And deservedly so. It should be.
You know, and everybody takes away something different. You know, I think also people like the film because I always tell the truth about things. I have no secrets. You know, secrets will kill you. But because of me being just an open person about everything in my life, you know, people take away, oh, dude, you signed Metallica. And when you signed Metallica, that changed my life. Or, you know, Michael, thank you for being open about, you know, being a gay man in the heavy metal and hard rock scene. You know, and people always say, did you have a hard time
Yeah, I could imagine.
incorporating yourself into that scene? And no, I never did.
No.
Because, you know, my sexuality didn't really come into play. It was always about loving the music and hanging out with everybody and drinking beer and getting crazy and getting into fights. So I think that kind of answered your question.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. How do you feel though, like because you were there before the internet came around and kind of ruined everything? Do you think it's even like a business to be in these days? Like it's probably
Well, it's a very different business. I don't know if the internet ruined things because, you know, you have things like YouTube, for instance. And when people say to us, you know, man, I wish I was around hanging out with you guys on the Bowery back then. Well, the beauty of all that, oh, there we go.
Yeah.
You know, people can see the Dead Boys on YouTube. And of course you weren't there, but at least a lot of that stuff was heavily documented, which is a plus. And what was your question?
I was just saying, like before the internet, for all the download button, all that, you were kind of, all the bands included were making, everyone was winning and with money, and now it's a lot of stuff could get pirated.
Well, it's a different. It's a
well,
different
you know
world
what? It's totally a different world, and things. You know, the reason I even stopped doing A&R after 24 years in around 2004 is because at that point in time, all the Tower Records were closing, all the Virgin megastores were closing. This little thing called Napster was happening.
Yeah.
And then what was happening is people were downloading, file sharing, and basically stealing music. And I just kind of didn't want any part of that. So I just ended my career.
You got out before,
And nowadays I just work independently on special projects that I want to be involved in.
Yeah. I mean, the computer thing is rough. I mean, even someone like, you know, me and Drew, like our movies could be stolen now. But you also to say that, but also in the 80s, how many times were you like, yo, I'm giving you a blank tape. Could you, tape?
Yes, that
so
definitely
you were still
did happen.
stealing, you know?
Yes, but you know what? People were actively buying records. You know, records went gold in 6 months or platinum within a year. It's tough out there these days. People do not buy records like they used to. Or a lot of people want to hear one song off of a record. Yeah. And, you know, you tell your friend about it and that friend sends it to another friend, sends it to another friend. And then people don't get paid for a lot of this music.
This is a good question for the two of you because I'm really big on this one. Like,
please.
So nowadays, like you said, everyone's going digital. But when I was growing up, you know, date myself the 80s too, I used to like looking at the album and reading everything.
Who wants to go first?
Yeah, and like looking at the band and just wondering like, what are they thinking at this moment? Like, you know, who is this? Who are these 5 guys on here that you're idolizing?
Absolutely.
And now digital, you don't have that.
No.
It's just you're playing the music and that's it. I always felt I was closer to the band when I owned the tape or the cassette.
What's
or
very
whatever.
funny, back in the day, in the TV guide, there was an advertisement for Columbia House, and you could get
The 12 for a penny.
You could get 12 for a penny, but you had to read the fine print.
Right.
It wasn't really a penny in the end.
And then they send you one every month, and you're on the hook for it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
And then you just didn't, pay them.
Yes,
and
no, of course.
Yeah.
But one of the first records I got through Columbia was in 1973. I got the Alice Cooper record Killer.
Okay.
And that changed my life. Alice Cooper changed my life. But the beauty of that was, you got the album, you opened it up, it was a gatefold with color photographs, and you got to see who the artist was, who the producer was, where they recorded the record. And it was just an incredible document to have in your hand. I'm still like that, and now I still have a turntable, and recently I just started buying vinyl again, like a lot of people.
And it's making a comeback.
Oh,
you know?
yes.
The record stores is literally that. You don't really see too many. You might see a little.
Well, there's not too many record stores anymore, but if you go to Barnes & Noble, specifically, Barnes & Noble has a small section with vinyl.
Yeah. Philly's got a lot of, believe it or not, just pure record
That's
stores.
right.
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
Yeah. It's like
I think that it's community and culture, and in this day, like when we were teenagers, me and Alago were close to the same age, we would run to the record store on Tuesdays because that's when things were released.
Yeah.
And we would see what comes out, and we would, you would scrutinize this artwork, and for music lovers, we'd see who produced it, and what were the names were, and
you used to like getting the battles and trivia. Like, is this such and such produced that?
And sometimes just the picture itself spoke to you.
Yeah, for sure, and the artwork,
the Iron Maiden covers,
different
right there.
Listen, growing up in Brooklyn, I used to go to EJ Corvettes on Bay Parkway, and I went to their record division section, and I saw this record of these four guys in makeup. And it was the first Kiss record.
Yeah.
I remember it said $4.99. I looked at it, and knowing that I had already known about Alice Cooper, I thought this was like an extension of that, and I had to buy that record. And they also became one of my favorite bands, Kiss.
I think also though, like in this day and age now, music doesn't carry the severity that it once did. When we were growing up, it was sort of like, what are you? Are you a rocker or are you a disco person? And you were identified by
Kiss with the makeup, Kiss without it.
Well, you were identified by what the kind of music you like.
Yeah.
He's a punk rocker.
Yep.
He's a rocker. He's a disco guy. And and look, I went to public high school in New York. You get into fistfights with people over this kind of stuff.
You could.
Or we used you take that vest off, or so that's that sort of stuff. You were closely identified with the type of music that you liked, and that doesn't really happen in this day and age now. Music, for the most part, is really like a soundtrack to a video game, and it's sad that we don't have those albums and that sort of stuff. So the artwork isn't as important or as scrutinized anymore because people download music they never even see. The
artwork
notes.
you see online, and it's really the size of a post.
And you might not see the band too, so you never know if the band
Well,
walks
then you
past
got
you
to
on the
start
street.
doing your research online.
So it's a
and
different world.
Google everything.
It's a different world, but I'm not saying it's a better or worse world, because in the world we live in now, it's just a different playing field. And for someone like, for a young kid coming up, in their reality, these are the good times.
Yeah.
And so in a way, we're sort of like dinosaurs. And people today, like a DJ is not a DJ that we remember playing, vinyl. DJs now, like DJs,
Digital.
create music, and so it's a new world, and new people come up, and there's still a lot of great stuff going on.
Without a doubt, because someone you could tell me about an artist, you could literally go to YouTube and someone's put the song up, so it's easier access. But I also just found, like, back in our era, like growing up, if you said Tuesdays, the albums came out at the record store, you'd go there and it'd be sold out. And you go back home and you're calling them every morning, every 2 hours. Did they come in yet? Did they come in yet?
Oh, absolutely.
You're getting on your bike, like you're going to earn it because you just feel so close to this music that you have to have it.
Oh, yes.
And I just think it was this more special.
I had like a list of record stores from Titus Oaks in Brooklyn.
You knew who worked there. You knew
absolutely.
And you were almost a celebrity, the person that was selling you the record. You looked up to them, like, wow, you work at the record store.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, that was a job, record store. That was like, I worked at
Empire
I
Records.
worked at a couple record stores growing up, you know, and it was a place to really. I got connected with a lot of music and learned a lot about music working in record stores. Because I was thinking about this recently. When I worked in this record store, you had a playlist that you had to play. So you had to play this, and it was vinyl. As a store employee, you would have to, the record would end. So there's certain records I remember. I worked in a record store like in 81, 82. There's certain, like there was, let's say, 6 records every 3 months that are just ingrained.
And you hate them at that point.
Well, it was like the Stray Cats,
Yeah.
Don, you know, like I remember Diana Ross. So I'm still years later, like really know that those records, and that's just, you know, it's just part of it.
No, especially the people that watch anything that I do, we're horror movie buffs.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you, what was it like? How did you get White Zombie? Because everybody loves they all love The Devil's Rejects.
Well,
so
that's a
great
great
it all
movie.
springs all from you.
Well, I met Rob and in the East Village, and I met them through a good friend of mine, Daniel Ray, who's a producer who worked with the Ramones and Iggy and the Masters of Reality. And he said, there's a band that I think you need to see because you're going to freak out. So he brought me to a little nightclub on, it wasn't even a nightclub, it was
A space.
a space below a restaurant on Lafayette Street. And like I say in the film, in the corner, in the back, in the dark, these people were just making a lot of noise, a big friggin' racket. And I responded to that racket. I loved it. And when the show was over and they were sweaty and everything, and, you know, the stage maybe was 6 inches off the ground, I started talking to Rob. And, you know, I'm paraphrasing, but Rob basically said, we're going to be famous and I'm going to make movies. And, you know, he was just somebody who looked me directly in the eye, and I believed him. And I, you know, like I said, I was always a good judge of character. And I knew this had a real bunch of charisma about him. And so I thought, you know what, I'm signing these people. And was he just making a face behind my back?
No, you're a good judge of character.
Yeah. He
Thank
took
you.
credit. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
She took your one. Yeah.
Of course, yes. So, you know, I had a few meetings with them. I did a demo with them. It all worked out, and I signed them to Geffen Records. And soon after that, White Zombie only made 2 albums.
And then all
Las
the remixes,
Exorcisto, and then the Astro Creep 2000, and then a lot of remix albums. And then Rob just went on his own and started the Rob Zombie Band and started making his films. And that's what he does these days.
Alago also signed the Misfits that we talked about. Talk about like horror rock. He signed the Misfits together.
And listen, you know, if you ask me, the Misfits are the best pop band around because they really are a pop band that just talk about horror movies. But I did sign the Misfits in 1997 to Geffen Records, and we made a record called American Psycho. And it's really a great record.
Produced by Daniel Ray.
Produced by Daniel Ray, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You owe him, everybody.
Oh, I love the Misfits. You know, they're my favorite band, and you know there are 2 shows coming up: December 28th in Las Vegas and December 30th in Los Angeles, and I'm definitely going to both of them. And you know, I have great affection for Doyle, who is incredibly charismatic and one of my favorite people in rock and roll. And he has his band right now that are on the road somewhere. So you can go on social media and look up Doyle and go see him and his band somewhere.
Yeah, we love the Misfits.
They're pretty, oh, I almost said the F word. They're pretty friggin' fabulous. Oh, now I'm getting hot. Oh, so it's because I'm talking about Doyle. And Doyle, I love you. And also, oh, wait a minute. Oh my God.
Oh.
I even have my Doyle t-shirt on where he's blowing bubble gum. Okay, that's it. What's next? Do we still have time here? What are we doing?
We got another
No,
12.
we got another
Okay,
12
fine.
minutes.
Wonderful.
So, and you had I know some major producers on this film, and I saw one of them was Cyndi Lauper.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Well, I love Cyndi. I've loved Cyndi since around 1981 when I booked the Ritz. I booked her band Blue Angel. We kind of stayed in touch over the years. A dear friend of mine, Lisa Barbarese, has managed her this whole entire time. At some point in time, she gave me a phone call. It was in 2009, and she wanted to make a dance record, and I was the A&R person to make that record with her. It's called Bring You to the Brink. She called me back a year later in 2010, and she said, I want to make a blues record. I know we both have never made a blues record. Will you help me? I said, absolutely. And we made an extraordinary blues record with a producer named Scott Bomar and it got nominated for Best Contemporary Blues Album at the Grammy Awards. We didn't win, but it's really great to be nominated because it made us feel like, you know what, all that hard work paid off. We really did a great job on that record. And we had this guitar player that we love named Johnny Lang on the record. We had all of Isaac Hayes' band, all of a bunch of Al Green's band on the record. So the music was just smoking.
Bunch of heavyweights.
And you know what? We had the most fabulous time in Memphis making that record. So then when it came time to talk to Cindy about this movie, she just said yes,
I think in a lot of circumstances, this film gave some people the opportunity in a certain way to give a little something back to Alago, who was really there for people early on in their career. And when we got the ball rolling with Kickstarter, and a little bit later on when we needed a little help, so to speak, it was really great how many people stepped up, like Cyndi Lauper and Rob Zombie. Jesse Malin is another one.
Julian McCain.
Yeah,
Right.
and people, people really wanted to see this film get done. People really felt that it was important that this film got done. So that was really nice, to be directing a film that people
Get back.
Yeah,
Well,
it's already
yeah,
like
and
you already
people
know
just-
people were rooting for you already.
Yeah.
Right. This is an important piece of history. I want to see it get done, Drew. And that was very inspirational in a lot of ways,
All like the punks out there who Public Image.
Oh my
So
gosh.
well, I just saw within the last
It's
year.
so funny because I don't even know where to begin with John. I know John for 36 years. I booked Public Image into the Ritz. There was a debacle of a show. I originally had Bow Wow Wow scheduled to play. Malcolm McLaren, their manager, called me up and said, "We're not coming." And I was like, "Dude, we have 2 nights that are sold out." They never showed up. They also never sent back the deposit, but you can't ask for the deposit from a dead person. So
Right.
next, I knew PIL were coming in to promote their new album, Flowers of Romance. I called them up and I said, "Let's do this show." They said, "Well, we don't have a set together." I said, "Well, but we'll buy Keith, I think it was called a Prophet 5. We programmed 40 minutes worth of music into it. They wanted to do a performance art piece. People were there they wanted to see Johnny Rotten in action.
Yep.
And they weren't getting that. So about maybe 15 or 18 minutes into the performance, chairs started flying, beer bottles started flying, and there was a full-scale riot. It was on the 11 o'clock news that night. It was on the 7 o'clock news the next morning. It was a shot heard around the world because Melody Maker, New Musical Express, Sounds, the cover of every British publication. At some point, fast forward, I'm already at Elektra. It's probably 1985, and John is looking for a label, and I signed Public Image Limited, and we made a record called Album. It was a generic album that everybody was on, from Steve Vai to Ginger Baker, and it's a great record. I also, at that point in time, he had 2 other records out that weren't getting released in the United States, called This Is What You Want, This Is What You Get, and Live in Tokyo. So I picked those records up for North America and Canada. At some point in time, the records really weren't selling like the label thought they should. So I had to release the artist from his record deal. But a wild thing is that, we know each other 36 years. We never had a bad word with each other. And so also, like you said, when it came time for people to show up for the film, they showed up for the film. And he's just extraordinary. He has a documentary coming out next year called The Public Image is Rotten, and which is a great title.
Yeah,
and you know what? I'm in his documentary. He's in mine, and ours. And he's extraordinary. He is one of a kind. And I think Drew really loved interviewing him. And I don't know if you talked about this earlier, but
No,
I don't know, a little John Lydon for people.
Yeah, no. For me personally,
It's pretty animated.
For me personally, that was a big highlight of the film. John Lydon, Johnny Rotten is somebody that really resonate in my world personally. Coming up in New York City and being a part of the hardcore and punk scene, that was I was really looking forward to it. and he really shines in the film, and he's just great in it. He really lights up the screen, and
he's brilliant.
He's just
His sense of humor,
he's just great in it.
his comic
you know?
timing, his sarcasm,
Yeah.
all of that just adds up to this
And
extraordinary
he still has that amazing
human
voice,
being.
still
Oh.
going.
He's one of the highlights of the film
Absolutely.
for sure.
And you know what? Seeing Public Image these days, the last couple of tours, his voice almost has this operatic feel. That's how he uses his voice, almost like an opera singer.
Yes.
I mean, it has nothing to do with opera, but
He holds a note. Yeah,
but in that
exactly.
very operatic way. He really is one of the most extraordinary people that I've ever come across. And I am delighted that we're still in each other's lives. And I think the world of him.
Yeah, we like
Really,
him.
a very special human being. Yeah.
And I guess one of the last ones
Uh-huh.
we're getting Nina Simone.
Oh boy.
Yes.
You know, I mean, we could have.
He's connected to
If
everybody.
it was up to me, we could have had this whole show be about Nina Simone. Nina Simone was one of the greatest artists to ever walk the planet, if you ask me. Nina Simone was a great interpreter of song. She could take Tom Thumb's Blues by Bob Dylan. She could take Here Comes the Sun by George Harrison, twist it, turn it, make it her own so that you think she wrote the songs. I was always taken by her voice when I was 14 years old. My Aunt Jenny used to play her records, and I heard this, and I didn't know the word then, but I use it now. She had almost this androgynous voice, a very smoky voice, very husky voice, very deep voice. And I just thought, I'm so attracted to this voice. And it spoke to me for my whole life. And when I had the opportunity to sign her, I was at Elektra, let's see, it's already 1992, and I followed her all over the world. It's too long of a story to tell, but finally I did sign her, and we made a beautiful record called A Single Woman. And she had just lost her dad in 92. I lost my dad. And we wanted to make this record about love, loneliness, and loss. And there were two records we both loved. Billie Holiday's last album, Lady in Satin, and Frank Sinatra's A Man Alone. A very odd album for Frank Sinatra because it was an album by words and music by Rod McEwen, gay poet from the 70s. You don't necessarily think Rod McEwen
But they're going to match up.
and Frank,
Yeah.
but it's a beautiful record. So we took those records and kind of borrowed little things from it. And I made this beautiful record with her, like I said, called A Single Woman. We made it at Chick Corea studio on the West Coast with a producer named Andre Fisher. Andre was married to Natalie Cole at the time. He was also the drummer in Chaka Khan's Rufus. And it's a stunning record. And it wound up being her last recordings. Even though she passed 10 years after that in 2003, she never recorded again. So that was like the final document. And I was glad I was witness to that and took part of it because I simply adored her. And, you know, there is no other artist I feel about like her.
She was strong-willed. She was a strong woman.
Big time. Big time. Fabulous. Nina Simone. If you only hear one song, go listen to Feeling Good. Or listen to Here Comes the Sun, or listen to a little Bob Dylan that she does, I Shall Be Released. I mean, Nina Simone was one of a kind. She's very special. There will never be anybody like her. And it was about a period of time as well of her coming up during the civil rights movement. And she was just a very special person, very special artist. You know, even when Bob Dylan got his Music Cares Award, he named her out specifically. Saying he used to run into her all over the place. And he said, I was honored that she would even consider one of my songs. Bob Dylan saying that about Nina Simone. Very special human being. So even if we ended on that, wonderful. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely, but I will let you two, starting with Drew, focus on this camera. Let everybody know any of your plugs or where they could see your films.
Thanks for the support, everyone. I really appreciate it. It's been a great ride for both Is That Guy, The Fabulous Journey of Michael Alago, and my other film, the New York Hardcore Chronicles film.
And your first film, come on.
And the
Come on.
XXX All Ages.
My favorite.
The Boston Hardcore film.
Yes.
Check us out on Facebook. You can find me, Drew Stone, or Michael Anthony Alago. And, you know, that's it, really. You know,
But they could see the Chronicles and this on Netflix.
And also, if you're looking for the New York Hardcore Chronicles film, check out www.newyorkhardcore.com. the New York Hardcore Chronicles film.com. Me personally, www.stonefilmsnyc.com. There's plenty more to come. So once again, thanks for the support. I really appreciate
Well,
it.
and you can find me on all social media. I live on social media. It's like my last addiction in life. I'm always on Instagram. I'm always on Facebook, and under Michael Anthony Alago. And you could see our film, Who the F Is That Guy,
Yeah.
on Netflix,
Thank you.
Amazon, and iTunes. So check it out. And if you haven't checked it out yet, what are you waiting for?
It's worth
You know,
it.
you laugh, you cry. I lived. Peace.
So you come back to
Arlington at the time.
you come back to Princeton, and you said Princeton was changing. It was a rural area town to more of a leafy, suburboisie, as I call it, community. Good place.
It was quieter, and you couldn't get anything to eat much after 11 o'clock, and it was all male university. Women imported for the weekends, and it was pretty quiet. You didn't have many tourists coming through.
Right. And you were at Newman Hall or by Newman Hall?
We were at a building which was built to our specifications and rented to us by the university. That was one of the ties we had with the university, was renting a building on the eastern edge of the campus and paying our rent by means of time on a computer, which was one of the most advanced computers at the time. Now it looks like a joke.
Right.
At the time, it was used by the university. They had a professor in Schwarzschild who was doing star evolution, and he wanted time on a computer, and the university didn't have one, and we did. So we paid our rent.
So it was a
Partly with
win-win.
that.
And you're in the CRD again? What's that
Communications Research Division was one of 5 divisions at the time.
Now it sounds pretty idyllic, though. You describe it as egalitarian.
It was a wonderful, wonderful organization.
Describe that.
It was ideas were mainly those of a single man. Richard Leibler was his name. He was the first deputy director. He came from the National Security Agency, and he had many ideas about how a research organization should be run. And he was, through IDA's easy management of us at the time, he was able to inculcate his ideas, and we had no ranks on the staff, and papers that were written were authors were listed in alphabetical order, and joint work was encouraged. We had no particular hours. We were just expected to do good work and be paid for it at every 2 weeks. We didn't have a time clock, anything of the sort. We were also encouraged to do our own research, because the main talent that was recruited was that of mathematicians. Wow. And for a mathematician to maintain his professional competence, he's got to do mathematics. So we were encouraged to do mathematics in addition to working on the problems, which were very difficult, but fascinating problems.
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of paradise in a way. It's a playground.
It was marvelous.
Right.
Some people might refer to it as a sandbox, but we were very serious about working on the government's problems, and we were able to make very important contributions. Otherwise, they wouldn't have renewed the contract, because there was, as you might imagine, a lot of jealousy from the government, because people who were in the government who were working on the same kinds of problems at the National Security Agency, for example, were envious of our working conditions and ease of parking.
Right. Objectivity, you could just,
Right.
do research, work on problems.
Right, and so we had to overcome a lot of that, and we overcame it in the only way we could, namely by doing good work.
Right. And they couldn't deny you. But now, it's around, let's say, 1965, storm clouds are starting to come up.
Right. We had the Vietnam War was starting to warm up. We still hadn't got a lot of troops in there, but there was an undercurrent of unhappiness with the government and its policies.
Right.
And we had just a little bit of demonstration at our place, a suggestion that the relationship between IDA and the government and the university was suspicious, was looked upon with some suspicion by the people who were unhappy with the government's policies.
Mm. But you yourself said you grew up during the Good War, and you said you yourself were put off by the sullied lies of the government during the Vietnam era. You were against the war itself.
I was not happy. I was at the beginning when the students were protesting and there was a lot of noise. I got a number of books and read as best I could on both sides of the issue to try to see what was going on. And it seemed to me that it wasn't a good idea for us to be there, and I was not in favor of us being there, but I continued working because we didn't have anything to do with the war.
That's what, yeah.
The rest of the IDA, they were working on the war. And not always in a way that our accusers would believe.
Right. Your problem was a lot of it was secret. They had to take your word, and then you have SDS coming onto campus.
Right.
You have it turned out you describe it almost. They came on with a scorched earth policy, almost nihilistic, and they really didn't want to hear the other side. It was anarchy for them.
Yeah, they assumed that we were lying, whatever we had to say, and it really didn't matter what we were saying because they wanted to protest the war, and if we hadn't been available, perhaps they would have gone to the post office
to find it.
I don't know, but we were the closest thing, especially our name and the fact that the other divisions were working on the war. They could protest initially their university's connection with IDA, and then what work they thought we were doing, or they could accuse us of doing, and we couldn't defend ourselves very well because our work was classified. We couldn't tell them what we were doing.
But then they stepped up. They started blockading the building.
As the war heated up, so did the demonstrations. There was a parallel path of anger and excitement and agitation, and the demonstrations got more and more vigorous, and they took the form of blockading our building and keeping us from going into work. And finally, it culminated in an enormous demonstration which lasted a number of days in 1970. And that was further worsened by the Kent State business.
Oh, it's there.
And
Welcome back to Breezing with Bierman, and here we are with What's Trending with Raya, our holiday edition. So let's start with our first item for this month. So this coming weeks are going to be filled with many holiday parties, and if you go to one, maybe you will overindulge a little. So if you plan to party hard this holiday season, chances are you won't remember to drink water in between alcohol beverages, right? Bitox wants to help with that. So it's a patch that you apply before you go out drinking. The patch claims to contain, a blend of vitamins, nutrients, and antioxidants. It aims to lessen your hangover. So an editor in Huffington Post even tested it and really have a positive results. So if you're someone who rages hard onto the weekends in this coming holiday seasons, it's worth giving a shot. So remember, drink responsibly. Our next item is going to be very helpful with your sweater. So we're dipping our toes onto the cold season right now. So you probably already pulled out your old sweaters or sweater collections, right? So, but with sweaters come those annoying pills. Oh, I hate those things. When you try to wash their sweaters, you develop those pills. So they make your sweater look cheap and really like old. So they're so hard to get rid of. Yeah, you try the lint roller or tape, they don't work. So I have this item. It's called Conair's Fabric Diffuser. It's a battery-operated shaver that moves over your sweater to easily remove those pills. Grab your own for $12.99 on Amazon.com and make sure to link me up so I can link you to Amazon.com and get some promo codes. Our next item, there have been numerous mornings that I've been late because I keep looking for my keys and I couldn't find them. So if you are in search for the great key hunt, how cool would it be if you just can slap your keys once you get to the house, right? In any walls. So my friend Alex introduced me to lit pads. So they're sticky pads that let you stick anything anywhere. So these are also awesome for holding your phone while you drive. Of course, just for the GPS, don't text and drive, or sticking your phone to the wall when you're doing some tutorial videos, right? So the pads are reusable, so feel free to stick them anywhere to hold stuff everywhere. Next one, are you trying to stick to a budget this holiday season? Well, I have the secret weapon for you and I can help you with that. So the company Miss A sells jewelry, accessories, makeup brushes, and cruelty-free cosmetics, and majority of it is just $1. So you'll be able to get stuff for so many people on your holiday list with these items. So I've been able to test out some of their products, and let me tell you this, they don't really look or feel that it's just $1. So visit shopmissa.com and try them for yourself, and you will see how awesome these products are. And for our last item for this month, many of us will be traveling for the holiday season, so you might find yourself on a 1 or 2 plane ride. So sleeping during a flight, it's a clutch. I really hate it. So if you're flying someplace, chances are you're going to be sleep deprived or you will be sleep deprived. So I have this product. It's Turtle Travel Pillow. It's a neck wrap with built-in strengthened ribs that support your head and neck. So unlike those neck pillows that you have, this is so much better. So the fleece makes it comfy and it's lightweight and machine washable. So if you're planning on traveling during the upcoming holiday season, make sure to grab one at Amazon.com or their website. So there has been our What's Trending with Raya Holiday Edition. Baba Booey to all, and I'll see you next year for more exciting stuff only here on Breezing with Bierman.